by itself in the middle of absolutely nothing but forest. The lawn was completely unkempt, as the grass was almost at knee height. I was used to this kind of thing, so I didn't think much of it. I took the pizza to the front door. There was no doorbell, so I knocked loudly on the door. Within 10 seconds, I heard the sound of footsteps hitting wood on the inside of the house. The footsteps made it to the door and stopped. I started to feel uneasy. I got the feeling that I was being watched. And that's when I noticed there was a peephole on the door. "It's the pizza guy," I called out. I heard a low, harsh-sounding voice on the other side of the door, telling me to bring the pizza out back. I didn't like the idea of going back there. Something didn't seem right. "Are you sure, sir?"
Hello.
I called out. He didn't answer my question. The sound of footsteps didn't move away from the door, so I had the feeling he was still
Hope
watching.
you're doing awesome.
I almost found myself
Talked to
walking
you in a
back
long
to my car,
time.
but I
Hope
decided
you're
I
doing
didn't want
good.
any trouble with my boss. The last time I brought a pizza back, he gave me attitude, so I reluctantly walked through the uncut grass and around the small house to the back. I remember there was a shed and a little patio back there.
That it has.
In
That
the
it
patio,
has been a
there was
long
table
time
with
since we
4 chairs
talked.
surrounding it, and one of the chairs facing away from me. I saw the head of somebody sitting in the seat. I began walking over and said, "Excuse me."
And just of them from being sick, learning I'm doing alright.
"Excuse me," I said again louder.
That COVID, probably a cold I've been having for a couple days.
Over here. I turned around to see a man poking his head out from the corner of the house.
I'm good,
looking
Dad.
at me with
Been
the greatest smile.
relaxing, getting out of this funk
Let me
I've
show
been
you
in.
something. I freaked out, turned around, and ran around the house in the opposite direction, back to my car, for some reason still holding the pizza. I got in my car, started it, and got away from there. On my way back to the pizzeria, I pulled over to the side of the road and called the police. Eventually, I was informed that there was no sign of anybody having been in that house for a long time.
Yeah, I know you told me you were the Xbox.
After that, I have no idea what would have happened to me had I gone up to that man. But to this day, I still wish I had just turned my head to see who or what was sitting in that patio chair.
Yep. You telling me that you want the Xbox alone. So.
I was doing one-night deliveries during this particular shift. When I worked this job, I lived in the Poconos. It was very rural up there. I often found myself driving down roads surrounded by nothing but trees, just like this night. Only it was dark and foggy this time. Driving down a shortcut to town that I had taken many times before, I slam on the brakes when I see somebody jump out from the bushes onto the road. The sickening bump and thump from the front of the car confirmed that I had hit the person. I put my hand to my forehead, cursing to myself. I couldn't believe what just happened. I just hit a person. I got out of my car and checked to see if they were alright. There was a man wearing a black hoodie with the hood up. He lay motionless by my car tire. I had no idea what to do. At this point, I was panicking. Why the hell was this guy in the middle of nowhere? Why did he jump in front of my car? And then things got weirder. I could hear a scream for help, coming from the woods to the left of me.
Yeah, you told
Somebody
me
was in trouble.
2 years
I
ago,
looked at the man I hit with
you
my
left.
car.
You didn't have 2
He was
years
still
ago,
on the
but you
ground,
told me you left the
motionless.
company to play for
I
Xbox a
only
long
got
time
for a
ago.
minute, I figured. For whatever stupid reason.
I'm happy for you. Found something better for you. I'm happy for you.
I moved in the direction I heard the scream originally, hoping to hear another, but it was just total silence, except for the night creatures making their sounds. Where are you?
We used to play Modern Warfare a
It
lot.
was at that moment I heard the sound of a foot crushing the leaves on the ground. I turned in the direction of the sound, and even in the dark and foggy weather, I could still make out the figure of somebody hiding behind a tree opposite me. I ran as fast as I could back to my car, looking back constantly to make sure I wasn't being followed.
And what a good
When I
old
got back to
days.
my car, the man I had hit was gone. I didn't stick around to
Now
wonder where
it's
he went.
Cold War
I
and
just got back to my
Vanguard.
car and proceeded down the road. My heart was racing the whole drive through.
And Vanguard is
I got to the house and I rang the bell.
Oh, do you?
A middle-aged woman answered.
I think I know you did. I think I haven't got your name correct
And then
yet.
she asked me they let you guys
Type in the chat, I'm gonna follow
the
you after I get done with this round. Cause I don't know if I win this or not.
You got someone with you in your car.
Type it in the thing
thing
with that point. I'm probably watch the stream.
I called the cops using a woman's phone.
I mean, you used to, we streamed on Twitch. We streamed Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain. That was a good game too.
Where the man was hiding. This memory still haunts me every day, and I can genuinely tell you, it's painfully scary just to imagine how things could have turned out if I hadn't made the delivery.
We can play this together too.
Let's win this game though. How about that? Let's win. How you doing? Coffee or good? Or AJ or whatever? Yeah, my buddy Kyle, how you doing? Shut up, Todd. I'm gonna go. Yeah. What up? What you watching? I'm gonna almost get away with something, bro. That's what's awesome.
You all got all of us killed, Kev.
In my old house, my room had its own floor. It wasn't even supposed to be a bedroom. It was more of an attachment to the attic, or a closet-type room.
I mean, literally it's for one guy.
People that owned the house before us used it as a playroom for their daughters. My room also had a huge closet.
We just lost around because I killed one single guy, but they all got to kill one guy.
So that you have to climb a set of wooden stairs to get into it. It had a big sliding door, and it was completely packed with toys and other junk from my childhood.
Okay.
Since I was little at the time, I always got scared of being so separate
Bam.
from the rest of my family, and having that huge closet in my room.
Okay.
Then there was this one night, I was laying in bed, afraid after watching a scary movie with my family. Then I heard the sound of a toy fall over up in the closet. I jumped out of my bed and ran to my parents' room. They told me there was no one in my closet. They saw how afraid I was, so they let me sleep in their room that night. The next night, I had kind of forgotten about it until I heard it again. The sound of a container of Legos spilling out everywhere up in the closet. Again, I ran to my parents' room and told them about it. My dad was starting to grow impatient with me. He reluctantly agreed to let me sleep in their room again. The next day, me and my mom checked the closet, and there it was. A pile of Legos lay on the floor, spilled out of the container. I thought this was proof that somebody was in my closet, but my mom assured me that it simply fell over. That night, my dad locked his door. He said he was tired of my nonsense. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there completely silent with my young boy imagination running, waiting for another sound to come from the closet. It was probably about an hour before it happened. It broke the silence. The sound of the closet door.
Hey, your mom's a house.
The moonlight shining through my window, illuminating a figure standing by my closet door. I let out the most horrific, ear-piercing scream you've ever heard, as pure terror swept over my body, a feeling that I still remember today.
5 seconds. Proceed to biohazard container location.
When I was in 8th grade, I went on a school trip that was called the Louisiana Tour. It was mostly going around to significant sites in South Louisiana.
Hold on,
One of the
really?
places we
Yes.
went to was Myrtle's Plantation,
How do you have a
which is
team
considered
kill?
to be one of the most haunted places in the country. There are all kinds of stories about the place, but at one point we were standing in a room as a part of a larger group, and the tour guide was talking about something. I don't remember what. As I'm standing there, I start to hear what sounds like someone hitting a piano key. After I heard it a couple times, I started to look around for the source of the sound. I didn't see the piano, but I kept hearing it. So I asked my friends who were standing near me if they heard it. They said no. When I heard it again, I said, there it is again, you must have heard it. They thought I was crazy. So I went back to looking around the room. Everyone's eyes were on the playground except for one woman. She caught my eye and pointed at me, and then her ear was flushed in the air. I realized she was asking if I heard it too, and I nodded. At this point, the tour guide starts telling a story about a soldier who had died there, and that he played the piano, and multiple guests had reported hearing him playing in the night. I honestly didn't know what to think. I guess I still don't. I talked to the woman as we were all leaving the room, and she said she heard the exact same thing as me, but her husband and son had not heard it. It was near Halloween time when my friends and I were telling ghost stories. My friend said she was going to tell a story about her parents' first date. She said she didn't like telling stories since it was actually true, but we prodded her on. To cut to the chase, he was having a nice, awkward first date, and around the time that they would have said goodnight, Ronnie's situation, who's my friend's dad, suggested that they go for a midnight hike up Dover Canyon. He apparently knew the place, since he had done a fair amount of rock climbing in the area. So the two drove up the top of the canyon, got out of their cars, and started hiking under just the light of the stars.
I'm going to take a short break from TikTok. I'm perfectly fine, I'm just moving into my new place. And at the moment my data connection is terrible. I'll post whenever I can, but I'll get internet put in soon. Hey everyone, I'm going to take a short break from TikTok. I'm perfectly fine, I'm just...
the way into the trees when his foot hit something soft in the middle of the path. Under the trees, it was too dark to see just what the soft thing was, and the feeling came back stronger than ever. Instead of finding out where his foot had bumped into it, he and the woman both agreed to hightail it out of there. Years later, lucky to be married for some time, they were watching an interview with the serial killer Ted Bundy. In response to a question asking him to describe the time when he felt the closest to being caught, he explained about the night when he drove the girl into Dover Canyon and had just killed her when he heard some people coming to the shed. Just in time, only to watch some guy walk right into the body. For some reason, just turn around and walk away. My school's library is open until 2 in the morning for the idiots like me that don't do their essays until the last minute. It's a pretty small building and most of the books are in the basement area called the stacks. Just to give you a quick layout, here's the big main stairs that go down to the stacks, a dungeon machine room, and a long hallway with the 4 entrances into the stacks. The stacks are 2 really big rooms on opposite sides of the hallway with a huge amount of bookshelves and study desks lining the walls. I was there around 11 p.m. last year. It was a pretty
I get TK'd again for playing a bomb. I'm gonna get really pissed if he didn't even pick up on it, and I'm gonna get TK'd again and get really upset.
Going upstairs and downstairs again.
Stupid clown, finally the game.
2 hours, and everyone except for a boy looking a few desks down from me had already left. I was pretty zoned out by this point. It was an 8 a.m. class, so I didn't have much time until it was done.
It's got the power of infinity and beyond. This thing's got 3 speeds.
To make them do that loud whipping noise at the other end of the room. I sort of ignored it for a while, thinking they'd go away eventually, but they just kept doing it.
Here, there, and gone. It's got the power of infinity and beyond.
Tell them to knock it off. I get about 3 steps across the room, and it just stops. I sat back down and I was quiet again, only for like 10 minutes, before the pages noise started again, only the words louder. Like they grabbed a huge
This thing's got 3.
So cute sitting there doing absolutely fucking nothing, bitch! Get your ass up! Get your ass up! So I got up too and started
you look
looking
so
around with
cute sitting there doing
It got really
absolutely...
loud and it was pretty obvious where it was coming from by that point. So we started walking towards it. He was on one side of the shelves and I was on the other. We walked all the way down the shelves. No one there. We hadn't seen anyone come in the stacks, and we were on the side of the room with the entrance.
I love how you said, dude. I saw nothing! Get your ass up!
The noise stopped again, and we both sort of just ran and walked back to our seats. I assumed it was just a
I like to TikTok sometimes.
I really needed to get
Sometimes I do.
We sat down.
Why so high? I don't know. Dumb man. Okay, whatever.
Right next to the guy's chair.
I do both ways, I guess.
Stuff in his bag, looked at me, said, "Fuck this," and took off. I was out of there maybe 5 seconds.
Oh goodness gracious! Real ball in a minute.
Stacks at night, even when there's other people down there. What's
TikTok do? Of course you do. I didn't even know you on TikTok. Of course you post on there as well. I don't even know now. I didn't even never knew you post on TikTok. Yeah, I do too. Daily. The Nomad? Yeah. Was the Nomad? Uh-huh. You're not gonna get this while being little.
We rushed outside to see a man piloting a crappy old motorboat with absolutely no lights on. He had stopped directly in front of our bow. The man was middle-aged. He had a beard and a baseball cap on. I went up close and understood his really head. He asked us if we had any spare gasoline. I apologized and told him we didn't. I asked the man if he was loading a fuel or if he needed to ride back to the shore, but he declined. He came to a point of gas. His form awkward silence as me and my wife wondered why he asked us for gas then. The silence started to creep me and my wife out, mostly because of the way he just blankly stared at me. The only reason I could see was because of the deck light in the front of our boat. Other than that, we were surrounded by darkness. The man told me to break the silence and asked us if we had a good catch that day. I told him we didn't, still trying to be polite, even though the situation was odd and creepy. I asked the man how he was getting around in the darkness, but all he gave me was a chuckle, as if I had made a joke. I figured he misheard me. He turned his little motorboat around, and the last thing he said to us was, "Nice meeting you folks." He sailed off into the total blackness surrounding us. Me and my wife were completely weirded out. My wife told me she was afraid he was going to rob us. Being a fisher, you run into and make conversation with other sailors and fishers all the time. But I knew something about that.
A lot of people have been judging me for playing the zombies theme incorrectly because I leave out a note. So instead, I play it like this.
And the way he acted, we were both really uncomfortable. So I decided to turn out.
I guess this is you. 100% sure, but guess that's you. There's multiple that account name on here.
Around 2 in the morning, I woke
there was not only one.
Yeah. With my wife. I shot up from my laying position to see a man standing at the edge of our bed. I lunged out of the bed towards the man, but he was out of the cabin before I could even get out of the room. I heard the sound of the same motorboat starting before speeding away into the darkness again. We sailed all the way back to the shore that night and reported the man right away. Of course, nothing was ever heard of the topic again. We still have no idea what the man wanted or what he was planning on doing, but it still gives me nightmares to this day. The way my bedroom was laid out was that across the room from my bed, there was a small alcove that did not receive any light because of the closet that's slightly in front of it. So the closet blocks the ceiling light and the ambient light from outside when it's dark. I was in fourth year high school and was trying to sleep.
Hello everybody, how we doing?
You know that feeling like someone's staring at you? I was feeling it. I couldn't see anything. It just felt like whatever was staring at me.
I don't know who you are,
intent in it.
but let me tell you this.
I opened my eyes and
making a comment about somebody's kid,
where I saw a hazy
somebody's treasure.
Hey, get away! Get away from me, Peter!
Thought that it was nothing there.
Man, nobody wants to hurt you, right, Joe?
I closed my eyes again, trying to force myself to get sleep.
Hepatitis C! Joke's on you, I already got it.
Feeling scared.
Meningitis, I'm a
Then
carrier.
there was a creak sound. It sounded like somebody putting pressure on the floor. I opened my eyes again and I saw that it was in the opposite corner now. All my inner senses went ballistic and I threw my pillow and blanket over my head as I cried myself to sleep, all while hoping that the thing wouldn't come closer. I know I didn't imagine or dream it, and it still sends chills down my spine to this day. It was the first time my family ever went camping together. I I was 18
Alright,
at
what
the
this
time.
is has no name, so you
Probably
can't have
wouldn't
it.
have gone if it weren't for my brother and sister who were still only 11 and happened to be twins. It was mid-July and I was actually excited to do it.
Got him.
We drove all the
Halloween
way
is
out to
fun.
the country.
Hey, get away!
We didn't go to a camping site. My dad just parked the car on the side of the quiet road, and we hiked about a mile into the woods until we found a small clearing in the woods. We fixed our contents, after me and my siblings were working our parents. So for my time, I couldn't sleep at all. Trying to fall asleep in that sleeping bag was like trying to fall asleep on the grass. I just couldn't get to sleep. I spun around and tried to make myself comfortable for hours. My little brother and sister had been asleep for a long time at that point. And then I heard the sound of the zipper to the tent, zipping down. I woke up and saw someone poking their head into the tent. I couldn't see who it was. Dad? I whispered. Whoever it was removed their head from the inside of the tent. Dad? I said loudly. Whoever it was quickly moved away from the tent, leaving it unzipped. I was so confused. I was sure it was my mom or dad just checking on me, so I crawled out of the tent and walked over to my parents' tent. I unzipped it and crawled inside. My parents were both in their sleeping bags. I shook my dad until he woke up. I asked him if he had just checked on us. He said no. I got chills as he said it. I then woke up my mom poking at her with her, but she groggily told me that she hadn't left the tent either. I got goosebumps all over as I came to the realization that somebody actually came up to our tent, opened up the zipper, and came inside. A stranger. For all I know, some sort of psycho. I couldn't even really tell if my parents took me seriously or not, or maybe I just don't remember. But I do remember that I didn't get a minute of sleep that night. My parents were on the honeymoon to Key West. When they arrived at the hotel to check in, they were told that the room would be non-smoking. With my dad being a smoker, they requested a different room. They got the room switch and went to their room. As they got off the elevator, the smell of fresh paint was overwhelming. Down the hall there was a painter with all necessary supplies laid out around him as he was painting the wall. As my parents walked past him, they casually greeted him, and the painter had absolutely no acknowledgement of their presence. Whatever. When they got to their room, the smell of paint was even worse in there. So bad it wasn't even bearable. So they decided to go to the front desk to change rooms. When they explained the situation, the attendant looked very confused and informed them that there wasn't a scheduled paint job on that floor for that day, but agreed to change their room anyway. My parents go back to the floor to grab their luggage, and the painter is completely gone. All supplies cleaned up and gone within 10 minutes, and the smell of paint was completely gone. At this point, my parents were freaked out, but didn't think much of it and went to their new room. The next morning on their way to breakfast, they overhear a tour guide talking to a group. My parents tuned in when the guide mentioned the floor that they were originally supposed to stay on. Apparently a long time ago, there was a painter on that floor painting and fell down the elevator shaft to his death. Now my parents don't normally believe in the paranormal, but after an event like this that they had no explanation for, it freaked them out a good bit. This story didn't happen to me. It happened to my cousin, and yet it still freaks me out thinking about it. This story is all too true. My cousin Nikki was on Skype with his girlfriend Sam at around 1 in the morning on Friday night. She was asking him to come over and stay the night, but he didn't really want to drive over that late. Sometime into the conversation, Nikki noticed the closet door behind Sam open a crack. Nikki pointed it out, and Sammy turned and looked at the closet. They both ended up ignoring it. It was probably another half hour into the conversation that the closet door creaked open even more. Nikki spotted it again and told Sam that her little brother must be hiding in the closet. She denied it and told him the window was open or something, so there must have been a draft. It was about half an hour later that the closet door completely opened, and somebody stepped out of the closet and walked out of Sam's bedroom. Sam didn't seem to notice, but Nikki got startled from what he just saw. He told her that her little brother was hiding in her closet, But what she said next scared Nikki shitless. She told him that she was home alone that night. Nikki started yelling at the screen for her to lock her door and call the police, and that he would be over there as fast as he could. Sam just started to understand the situation as she turned and saw the closet door completely open. She ran over to her doorway and let out a blood-curdling scream before slamming the door shut and locking it. Nikki drove over as fast as he could while calling the police. When he got there, the front door was left open, so he ran into the house into Sam's room. He knocked on the door and told her it was him, but she wouldn't answer. When the police finally arrived, they busted open the door to find her curled up in the corner of the room in shock. She later told the police that she had seen somebody standing face to face with her at the doorway before shutting the door. It was a dark and stormy night, the kind of stormy that I loved, thunder and lightning roaring, so I was staying up late watching movies. I lived with my dad, but he wasn't home that night. He was working nights. Anyway, after I finished watching the movie Forrest Gump for the 100th time, I decided 2 a.m. was a good time to get some shut-eye. I loved going to sleep during thunderstorms. It was just enjoyable to listen to. But suddenly, I heard the sound of something hitting my window. It wasn't the sound of rain hitting the window, but in such a big storm I didn't think much of it and put my head back down. But a few seconds later, the same noise. Something hits the window again. This time I made the sound out to be a rock hitting the window. My heart started racing. It couldn't be my dad. He would call if something was wrong. Another rock hits the window. I found myself glued to my bed. I didn't want to look out the window, but whoever was outside surely knew I was up there. I had just turned the TV off. They could have seen the bright glare through the window. I just decided if I ignored it, they would go away. Another rock hit the window, and then another. It was getting faster. The rain started to lighten up, and that's when I heard the sound of a truck engine running down in the street. A much louder thump to the window was where I drew the line. I got out of my bed planning to call the cops. I ran down the stairs towards the phone, but as I passed the front door, I saw something. Something through the glass window at the top of the door. It was the face of a person looking through to me. It seemed like they had a smile on their face. I sprinted to the kitchen and called the police. They said there was an officer nearby, and they should be there shortly. Whoever was at the door started fiddling with the doorknob and eventually ramming into it, trying to bust it open. I grabbed a knife for protection and yelled that the police were coming, before running back upstairs to my room. After about a minute, the ramming to the door stopped, and there were no more rocks hitting my window. I still didn't dare to look out the window, but I remember hearing the sound of the truck drive off. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of a police siren outside, and moments later, the doorbell rang. I explained everything to the officer. I described the face as best as I could. Unfortunately, I couldn't provide him any information about the vehicle. If only I had looked out the window. I still regret not taking a quick look. There was never enough info for the police to catch these people. Not sure if they had intention of robbing my house, or much worse.
Time limit expired.
I'm just gonna leave these here. You can watch them, right? You seem trustworthy.
I spent a solid weekend playing on the computer a few years ago, drinking a lot of ephedra and coffee and generally not sleeping much. Every so often I'd feel an itch on my arms, like a loose hair falling on them. I'd brush it off and go back to staring at the computer. As this itching was happening more frequently, I started wondering if I was just imagining things, or delusional for the tea and insomnia. But then I noticed what appeared to be tiny spiders on my arms. Am I going crazy? Are these drug bugs or what? And I went back to the screen. Then I saw the strings of thin webs glistening in the light, and tiny spiders floating past my vision. They were real indeed. I noticed a hole in the ceiling where they appeared to be falling from. I blasted a can of wash spray into the hole, and hundreds of these little spiders began pouring out, screaming from their webs. Hundreds of them, all over me.
10 seconds. Be advised your drone has located a bomb.
I got home from work late one night, was walking out to my front stoop, and I walked right into this huge spider web. At first, I didn't think much of it until I looked down and saw about 20 to 30 baby spiders all over me. I started freaking out. Then noticed the parents sitting on my door. They were huge, almost the size of a hand. So of course, I didn't want to use the front door. I run to my back door, throw off all my clothes, and jump in the shower. I then watched as the spiders began pulling out of my hair. I got home late and my phone was about to die. I always plugged my phone into the outlet under my bed. I collapsed on my bed and reached my hand under my bed to try and find my phone's charger. But what I found instead was some kind of squishy sack. I began poking and squeezing it, when all of a sudden, I felt hundreds of little legs poking me and crawling up my arm. I pulled my arm out from under my bed, and then screamed when I saw probably 30 baby spiders crawling up my arm. I shook them off, told my parents, and jumped in the shower right away. Turned out it was a baby spider sack, and there was an even bigger mother spider living under my bed. I awoke from my deep sleep in the middle of the night to the feeling of something huge crawling around in my bed. Still half asleep, I jumped out and started freaking out, assuming it was a spider or something. With one swift motion of bravery, I flung the covers off the bed, but nothing was there. I started to think that I was just feeling it as part of a dream, and I continued to feel it until I fully woke up. So I went back to sleep. The next night, I felt the same exact thing. I felt it on my arms this time instead of my legs. Again, I jumped out of bed, still not in the fully awake state of mind. I was again freaking out and ran to my parents' room to get my dad. He was never afraid of spiders. He came to my room and flung off the sheets and covers. There was nothing there.
Yeah, and whenever like I had thanked him or whatever, like for me it would have been so cute. I feel like I could have helped him in a different way.
There was no spider in my bed
but
whatsoever.
like me and him would like flirt together.
However, the next night it happened
Me and
again.
him would flirt together
The feeling of
all
something huge crawling on my arm.
time. Like not like
Freaking out again.
on
My hands
accident, like we hold hands and like take nasty
once
pictures
again
and
jumped
hug
out
all
of
up
bed
on each other.
and flung off the covers. But this time I was greeted by the sight of the biggest spider I've ever
I feel like
seen.
Derek had feelings
Bigger than a
for me
tarantula.
for a while, but it was like
Quickly
we were
crawled
already
under
too
my
close.
bed in his sight as I screamed and went off to my
But
parents'
bruh,
room
like
to tell my dad.
even if we was too close, it would have been so cute. But I can already hear it now, like, if God, if he was still at school,
My uncle still
and
lived
Miss
with
Blatt
her,
knew
and
about
occasionally
him,
I
be
would
like,
stay
bro,
over
Miss
to work
Blatt,
with
look
my
at
uncle
my
for some
man,
good
and
pay.
she's like, nuh-uh,
Anyway,
break
I
up
was
now,
exhausted after
break
a
up
long
with
day's
him.
work with my uncle,
She's
so I
like,
basically fell into the rickety
negative.
old guest bed
On
upstairs.
Snapchat, I use it.
I watched some
It's
TV for about 10 minutes before just deciding to go to sleep. It was a hot night.
Xtream on
You know how on hot nights you constantly have to flip over the pillow to the cooler side? Well, when I did that, I put my head back down on the pillow. I didn't feel the soft, cushy pillow on my cheek. I felt a furry, indescribable object press up on my face. I jumped up in response to it and saw it showing a full-grown huntsman spider sitting on my pillow. I felt on the opposite side of the bed. I guess the shaking scared the thing because it took off at the speed of light. Where it went, I have no idea. I'm pretty sure the thing is still in my grandma's house.
And I do not care. And we do not care.
Number 4.
Yo.
This happened during a Boy Scout campout when I was 15. My friend, who was supposed to share the tent with me, called out from the trip at the last minute, so that meant I had to pitch the tent and sleep in it alone. The sun was going down, and after a long day of hiking, we got back to camp to set up our tents. It was already dark at that point, and I was still trying to set it up. It wasn't as easy doing it yourself. Someone came over and finally helped me, and then we ate dinner. After the cliched telling of scary stories around the campfire, we all went to sleep. I guess I was a little happy that I had my own tent at that point, since I had more room. I fell asleep quickly, but woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of somebody stomping around my tent. I immediately assumed there was another scout going to take a leak or something. You may be thinking that all our tents were pitched right next to each other, but our scoutmasters actually had us pitch our tents far apart, so I was pretty far from my closest scoutmates. The stomping around the tent seemed to just be going around in a circle, so at that point, I was sure somebody was messing with me. I asked who it was, and in response to that, they stomped off into the woods. I almost found myself going out and following them, but I figured it wasn't worth it, and just tried to fall back asleep. But after that, it was hard to. Sure enough, the stomping came back, and started circling the tent again. I was pissed off now, so I got up and unzipped the door to the tent. I was expecting to see another scout, but when I confronted the person making the noise, instead I saw a grown man, probably 6'5", in his mid-30s. My heart was racing and I couldn't even gather up the courage to scream. The man gave me a creepy smile, and then brought his finger to his lips, signaling for me to be quiet. I did a quick 180 and sprinted to my scoutmaster's tent, screaming like a baby. He ran out before I even reached the tent, and I told him about the man I saw. He and the other scoutmaster ran over to my tent with one of the hunting rifles, but they didn't find the man. They did, however, pick up on the tracks the man left walking around the tent. We were all told to bring our tents closer together, like literally right on top of each other. The trip was cut short the next day and we all went home. I have never gone camping since, and I never will again. Number 3. So me and a couple of my buddies went camping last summer alongside the Willamette River. We actually had a decent hike into the deep end of the woods. We did some night fishing, listening to music, and basically drank to the point where everything was funny later in the night. I would guess we finally called it a night somewhere past 2 a.m. I shared a tent with one of my buds, while the other two shared another tent. We heard them laughing about something. At first we laughed at the sound of their laughing, but it soon got annoying and we yelled for them to shut up. One of them responded, "It isn't us." I sat up, startled at the response. I came to realize that it was the sound of only one person laughing, and it didn't sound like either one of my friends. Even in my drunk state, I realized how odd it was for somebody to be out this far in the woods so late at night. The laughing gradually got closer and louder to our campout. My friend shot up and looked at me with a worried look on his face. I heard my other friends scream over to us that they were getting freaked out. As the laughing got even closer, I could make it out very clearly to be the laugh of a male, probably in his 30s or 40s. He sounded like he was as drunk as us, messing around with friends, but we only heard his laugh, nobody else. There was something indescribably creepy about his laugh, too, as if it was missing something to it. You had to be there to understand what I mean. The laughing was now just at the edge of our campsite. But we couldn't hear any footsteps at all. Now that may not seem like a big deal. It was impossible to move through that without making noise. And finally, all of a sudden, the laughing stopped completely. We had no idea where whoever that was standing, as he hadn't made a single stepping sound. We sat there in silence looking at each other. My friend was clearly freaking out, but he was keeping it together the best he could. Finally, something broke the silence. The sound of something rubbing against the cottony fabric of the tent. We saw the outline of a hand through the moonlight, pressing on the tent. We both screamed at the top of our lungs before getting out of the tent. We ran as fast as we could through the woods, our other friends following us. After about 5 minutes of running, we somehow found our car. I actually puked from running so much before taking the wheel. I don't experience of my life. No idea who or what the hell that was, or what they wanted. Number 2. After college, I went backpacking in the Canadian wilderness for a few weeks by myself. To put this in perspective, I was in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town was a 3-hour bus ride away, and I only saw one other person who was from a distance using a canoe, during the entire 7 days.
5 seconds
I
left.
brought a few disposable cameras with me, as this was before digital cameras were too widespread.
Oh, but
I
that's
took a lot
not
of
in the game.
pictures. When I got home, I had them developed and took a look at them. The pictures were still good mixer shots until I got after a few of my first camera. There were 2 pictures of me asleep in my tent in my sleeping bag. I literally freaked out when I saw it, and I had a complete breakdown. To this day, I have no idea how those pictures got taken. I haven't been camping since, and I sleep with my door open and my curtains shut, and I still get the paranoid feeling that whoever took those pictures is still watching me somehow. Number 1. My boyfriend and I decided to go out to the gorge for some quality time camping. We had always gone with several other people, but this was the first time it was just us two. When we got out of our car to prep our gear for the mile hike back to the camping spot, 2 sketchy-looking dudes came out of the trailhead, eyed us, and went back onto their old-school Volkswagen camper van. I had a weird feeling, but shrugged it off and proceeded back to our camping spot. I had previously camped in the same area a handful of times, and I knew it pretty well. Once we got back there, I moved a handful of different camping spots and proceeded to check them all out for the one that would be ideal for us. I noticed what looked like someone camping further up the hill, so I picked a spot a little further down where we most likely would be out of sight. Not out of earshot though, as I heard him yelling with someone else back over on the trail. It was starting to get dark by the time we got everything set up, so I figured I'd start looking for firewood. Suddenly, this guy appears out of nowhere and asks us if we'd like any help, and offered to sell us a bundle of firewood for $10. I laughed because we were in the woods, thus surrounded by wood, which I could pick up off the ground for free. He then said that I wouldn't find much because they'd already cleared it out over the past few weeks. I asked him how long he'd been camping up there, and he said almost a month. I already had the creeps about him, and he claimed he was up there by himself. I asked him why I heard him yelling with someone then, and that he had referred to more people when he was talking about the wood. He stammered and was like, yeah, there's some dudes I know camping over there, but up on the other side of the river. Then he proceeds to tell us that he's been lonely since he arrived. He is from Pennsylvania, took a bus to Lexington, and had been living in the woods back behind where I currently work. I knew exactly where he was talking about, because I saw some homeless people, immigrants, and drug addicts coming in and out of those woods every day. So basically, he was a homeless man who somehow got a ride out to the gorge and decided he would just live there instead. He had been living on snakes, bugs, and selling firewood for money. But he said we were the first people he'd seen in a few weeks. His stories were all over the place, and I know he was lying about a lot of what he told us. He wasn't alone even if he claimed to be. He even took us to his camp where there were tons of stuff for several guys, not just one. He said he liked camping up top where you could see everything, and everyone. Then showed up our campsite. He had a straight shot view. By now it was dark and he helped us get a fire going. I was trying to politely get him on his way back up the hill, so I could have a minute to process all of this. When he left, I started whispering to my boyfriend that there was no way in hell I could sleep with that lying, sketchy homeless creep right up the hill. We didn't have a gun, knife, or even a dog to protect ourselves if we needed to. My boyfriend somehow convinced me to stay a little longer, so we planned to stay the night. But all throughout the night, we heard twigs and branches snapping around our tarp, as if somebody was watching us. It was that man. I knew it was. He was standing out there, watching us. I said let's quietly get our shit together and get the hell out of there. Which we did, only we left our new tarp set up because they would make too much noise and he'd know we were leaving. As soon as I stood up with my pack, ready to get the hell out of there, he yells, "Leaving so soon?" We proceeded to get away from there as quickly as possible. The most disturbing thing, as we were getting away from there, the man yelled for us to come back. That only made us go even faster.
10 seconds to insertion.
In my mind, we were either getting robbed, raped, killed, or something, because he was not alone. His stories didn't add up, and his background of where he came from made me believe he was running from something, and was trying to hide by living off the grid. I called the Rangers the next morning and told them about him. Luckily, all he got from us was a set of new tarps.
Thank you.
Located a bomb.
This happened to my dad when he was a little kid. I think it messed him up a bit emotionally, but he never admitted it. The story freaks me out just imagining it. So I'm pretty sure my dad was 10 years old, and he was home alone for whatever reason. He was watching TV in the living room. It was the only TV in the house. And all of a sudden, the TV just shut off. So he got up and turned it back on. It was an old shitty TV, so it wasn't weird at all. When he got back on his couch, it happened again. He got up once again and turned the TV back on. And again it turned off. He repeated this process a couple more times before he started to look for the remote. While looking for the remote, he walked over to check behind one of the couches and saw a man hiding in the corner, holding the TV remote. My dad described the man as having long, messy hair and a crazy look in his eyes. He gave my dad a smile, and my dad ran out the front door screaming like a little girl. He went to his neighbors who called the police. The man was still in the house when the police got there, so he was arrested. My dad told me that he still assumes the man was either homeless or crazy. Either way, this story is downright terrifying. My friend told me about something that happened to her when she was younger, about 8 or 9. She was walking home from school and got her key out to let herself into the house. Her single mom worked and came home later on weekdays. As she reached up to put the key in the door, her mom opened it in a dressing gown, having left work sick. Instead of greeting her, she looked straight past my friend and immediately said, "Who are you?" My friend turned around, and a man in a long coat hurried back down the path and down the street. He knew that they had possibly saved her daughter from something potentially horrible happening to her. Before I start the story, I want to note that Jacob's mother is a drug addict, and his father really didn't have much wrong with him outside of being with his mother. So one night, when Jacob and his father were asleep, they heard a series of loud banging, scratching, and moving noises coming from the mother's room. Jacob's father jumped out of the bed and ran down the hall and started slamming on the door. His mother opened it, yelling at him to quiet down and that he woke her up. He asked her about the sounds. She hadn't been awake to hear them. Jacob's dad would have assumed that she was on something again, but something was wrong. The window was open all the way, and the TV was moved across the room, still plugged in, and had the screen facing outside. Jacob's dad was reasonably scared. He shut the window, got his bag, locked the mother's room from the outside, and made her sleep in the living room. He stayed up most of the night. He woke up Jacob at 5. It was still dark out. Jacob went out to the kitchen where his mother already was. A couple minutes later, his dad walked in, wide-eyed. He pointed at Jacob and his mother and held his finger to his lips. They both quieted down. They heard something shuffling around on the roof, going from edge to edge. Jacob's dad had the bag. They sat together in the room, quietly. Minutes later, the sound went away. Jacob's grandmother was called. She was asked if everybody could stay over there for a little while. She said yes and told them she'd come pick them up. Jacob finished eating and went to go sit on the couch. There was no TV in that room, so he sat in silence. He looked over at a door to an empty room in the hallway. The door was open. There was a finger wrapped around the side of it. Jacob screamed and pointed to it, and his father grabbed him and ran out. Jacob's mother followed behind. They went to a gas station and sat out front until they saw Jacob's grandmother's truck. Jacob described how unnatural the finger looked to me. He said it reminded him a little bit of a foam finger in length and width. It was wrapped clear around the door frame, the door itself being latched on the opposite side. They didn't go back to that house much after that. Once they'd gotten everything out of it, they never went back again. Nothing was stolen, and the window in the empty room was open.
You have dropped the diffuser.
I was 13 years old. I had the most isolated bedroom imaginable. Mix that with a wild imagination, and I was often up late at night, scared and paranoid, unable to fall asleep. My bedroom was a separate floor of the house, on the opposite side of my parents' room. They had no way of hearing what was going on in my room. So it was a seemingly ordinary night, with a bit of rain, but not a storm. I woke up and looked at my clock, and saw that it was 2 in the morning. I got an uncomfortable feeling right away, but I didn't know why. I then saw at the edge of my bed, there was a shadow of something roundish, just overhead of the edge of my bed. My heart started racing until I realized it was just my hat. I sometimes hung my hat on one of the wooden poles at the edge of my bed, so I calmed myself down and fell back asleep. I woke up again around half an hour later and was again startled by the sight of the shadow at the end of my bed. But after my brain started to fully wake up, I remembered it was just my hat again. This process happened one more time that night, probably another half hour later, and once again, I was startled by the sight of the shadow. I was getting thirsty, so I reached my hand down to the side of my bed, looking for my water bottle, but I instead found something else. My hat. And at that instant, I felt my heart drop into my stomach, as I almost fell out of my bed trying to turn the lamp on. The light revealed the face of a man, peering over the edge of my bed, staring right into my eyes. I let out the highest pitched scream a boy could possibly produce, and ran straight past the man, and down the stairs of my room. I felt the man try to grab me, but I managed to open the door and run to my parents' room to get my dad. My dad got the baton from under his bed and raced to my room, but he was too late. When we got back to my room, the window was wide open. Apparently the man jumped out onto the patio roof outside my window. When I was a kid, I had a huge group of friends that all happened to be on my block. On the weekend nights, we would always play man hunt, aka hide and go seek for older people. It worked out great because since we were all neighbors, we used all the front and backyards and even the woods behind our houses. We had a rule though, that we couldn't go out more than backyards and then into the woods. I always used the same hiding spot, and nobody ever found me. I always hid behind an old rusty barrel that was thrown into the woods years ago. So on this particular night, there were only 6 of us playing. My friends Joe and Raj were on my team. We quickly dispersed as we were the first to hide. I ran to my usual hiding spot, through my backyard into the woods behind the barrel. Usually I would see the flashlights of the other team shining through the backyards in the woods, but it was unusually quiet this time. And then, I finally heard footsteps nearby. I didn't see a flashlight, so I assumed it was one of my teammates. I whispered Joe and Raj's names, but then whoever it was started charging at me, full on sprinting. I immediately shot up and ran out of the woods to find a new hiding spot in my backyard, but nobody ever came out of the woods. I heard all my friends calling my name from out front, including Joe and Raj, so I assumed something was wrong and went up front. I saw Joe's parents talking with my parents, with all my friends surrounding. My parents seemed a bit relieved to see me, so I was naturally really confused. They told me that a police officer had just passed by and warned them about a serial rapist spotted in the area and that all the kids should stay indoors. I explained what happened to me in the woods, and my parents started freaking out, making 100% sure that I wasn't lying. They called the police. I really don't know if he was ever caught, but I really hope he was. I try not to think about what would have happened to me had whoever that was caught me. When I was maybe 12 or 13, me, my mom, my stepdad, and 2 dogs went to the beach for a weekend. We rented an apartment all the way at the back of the shore. The apartment had nothing surreal to it at first sight. We unpacked everything and went out for dinner straight afterwards.
Your name was Clown
We came back
69?
and at the time it was maybe 9 p.m. We watched some TV for an hour or so. My mom, stepdad, and 2 dogs slept on a bed we could make from the couch.
Is there anyone
They gave me a
else?
bedroom with a
Really?
king-size bed.
I
I
don't
went
really
to bed
think
and
so.
used my computer for a while to play some games that I had pre-installed since I knew that there would be no internet connection there.
People watch this stream?
I stayed up playing games
Hey, Barrett.
pretty late at night.
Suck my
I
sack.
decided it was time to
Hey,
get some
Spiderware,
shut
thank you
eye
for
and go to
the
sleep.
host. Appreciate it.
Maybe after 5
I only
minutes of
chat?
laying in my bed, complete silence filled the room. But then, all of a sudden,
Good. Barrett, look, I don't want to hear you complain about any gameplay ever again, okay?
I knew it wasn't
You
my
said it
parents
yourself,
or
you
the
don't
dogs
watch anyway,
considering the door to
so
the living
it
room
doesn't
was
matter.
closed.
What's going on
I straight
screen, you're
bolted
just
from
here to
that
chat,
room and went to sleep in
which
the
is
bedroom
fine.
opposite of the master bedroom. My heart was pounding so fast because I was absolutely petrified.
No bullshit from you.
Needless to say,
Alright?
no sleep was
None
had
of
that
it.
night. I told my parents about it the next morning, and they told me it was probably just my imagination, but I was certain it was not. This story still gives me nightmares to this day. I was staying with one of my best friends in North Carolina where I had a job interview. I was coming from New
Playing
Jersey,
Rainbow
and
Six,
my
gonna
friend
show
Mike
me.
offered
Hey
to
man,
let
I
me crash
appreciate
at
it,
his
dude.
place for a few
Hopefully
days.
your Rainbow Six games have been
He
going
didn't
well.
necessarily live too close to the company I was interviewing for, about 2 hours
It's pretty
away.
hit or miss, I feel like, with
I
Rainbow
also
Six,
just
you know?
wanted to see one of my good friends
Either you're
again.
having the time of
So
your
this
fucking
happened
life,
after the second interview.
or
I came back to Mike's place in a good
you just
mood
want to
as
hop
I
off
had
right
been
away.
offered
You're
the
like,
job
damn,
on
this
the
was a
spot.
mistake.
We celebrated really large that night with a few friends and a few beers. Or a lot
This
of
was a
beers.
mistake.
We stayed up late and basically got
It's because
shit-faced.
the highs are
People
so
were planning
high
on going all night.
that
That's the kind of person
when
I
you
was.
think of the game,
He didn't really keep
it kind of
track who
outweighs all
entered
the
or
negatives
left
that
his house.
happen. It's like with
So
League.
at about 4 in the morning, after
Like the
everyone
highs
had
are
left,
super high, but
we
the
called
lows
it
are
a night.
fucking like
I
you're going to
struggled
hell
to get
low.
up the stairs into the bathroom.
It's super hard,
I drained the
you know?
sink and soaked my face with hot water. And it was at that moment that I thought I could see something in the corner of my eye. I turned to the half-open door and saw an eye poking in at me through the crack of the door. I let out a loud, holy shit, and in my drunken, klutzy state, I fell to the floor.
God,
When I got
shit.
back on my feet,
He's
the eye
ready
was
for it.
gone. I stumbled out of the bathroom and called Mike's name. I heard him call
Shit,
out
he
in
got me.
response
No, he
from
blocked me.
downstairs in the kitchen.
No,
Couldn't have
why did
possibly
you
been
block,
him.
bro?
I didn't
What
hear
the
anyone
fuck are
go
you
down the
doing?
stairs, but I asked if he was up there anyway. Expectedly, he replied with a no. I can't remember
He's
fully,
gonna
but
miss.
I assume I just brushed
He
it
missed.
off under the assumption that I had too much to drink. I made it to the guest bedroom and basically fell onto the bed,
Classic
barely managing
Swedes,
to
man,
pull the covers
honestly.
over myself.
Dying for no
You
reason?
know
Are
when
you
you drink, you
serious?
fall asleep easier. That's an understatement. I think I fell asleep seconds after falling onto that bed, only to wake up after an unknown duration of sleep.
I forgot body
I immediately
blocking
felt
was
the
the thing.
unbearable
My
headache
bad,
coming
me.
on.
All good, all
I began
good.
to rub my head. It was
been a
probably
while.
a little before sunrise. The room was a bit chilly. My foot was sticking out of the covers, hanging over the edge of the bed. Then it happened.
Well, I'll leave again. See you later.
I felt
Have a nice
something
night. Slash
extremely
morning.
cold
Take care,
grab
Monos.
onto my foot
Thanks for hanging
and
out, man.
start stroking
Have a
me.
good one.
I then heard a raspy voice whisper the words, "Can you help me?" I sat up and screamed at the top of my lungs before sprinting out of the bed and out of the room, leaving Mike at the top of the stairs. I called the police and they arrived shortly. The intruder was actually a woman in her late 40s who clearly suffered from some kind of addiction. She admitted to simply walking right into Mike's house and hiding in a closet. The eye I saw was hers, peeking at me while in the bathroom. I always make sure to cover my feet with my sheets and
No!
It was the dead of winter in
This
college.
game is so
Me and a couple
scum.
buddies were on a skiing trip in South Lake
What do you
Tahoe. We
mean?
stayed in a big luxurious log cabin for 2
Bro.
nights.
What the fuck?
I got up to get a glass of water late in the night.
I have Unbreakable
As I
also.
crossed the cabin over to the kitchen,
Oh,
there was a frantic knock at the door.
Jeez.
I was a bit spooked that somebody would be knocking this day. I thought maybe I should just ignore it and let them go away. But I realized they knew we were there, as my car was parked right outside. I also had the thought that maybe somebody was in trouble and needed to get out of the dangerous weather. I tiptoed over to the door and waited for another knock.
Get a sniper, how's it going on,
It
mate?
didn't take too long before the knocking came again. This time much louder and more
R6 is like
frantic.
getting pegged. It may sound fun, but you're not prepared for what's
What is
about
it?
to
I
happen.
asked.
Jeez.
Nobody answered. I asked again louder, but there was still no answer. After I asked this, there was no more knocking. I grew curious and eventually
doing
opened
well?
the door a crack with the chain lock still on just in case. Nobody was outside.
Like when I get tier 95, pins getting cut off, and
There were footprints in the snow.
my ass
and
most
the
likely
white
to bed it's gonna go to bed. Most likely. Oh, I'm playing a different game. I don't know. We'll see.
I slipped on my boots and jacket and stepped out into the storm to follow the footsteps before they were completely filled.
How did Josh get
The
saved?
footsteps led me to the edge of the property before completely stopping. I shit you not, the footprints completely ended. Not a sign of vehicle marks, a struggle, nothing. It was as if whoever made the tracks was standing still, right where I was. I felt disturbed and ran back into the cabin and slammed the door shut behind me, making sure to lock it. Before I could even gather my thoughts,
Josh saved
the
himself.
frantic knocking at the door
That's a
resumed.
manly man right there.
My heart started pounding, and I started to scream for
He
my
don't
friends.
rely on nobody.
One by one, they all
like
rushed
that.
down to see what was wrong. When we opened the door, there was nobody there. The footprints were already filled. I never could prove what happened to my friends. I don't blame them for not believing me. I almost don't believe myself, but I know it happened. I just can't even try to explain it. It still freaks me out to this day. My friend and I were going to a party a few hours out of town, so we decided to stay at her family's holiday house about an hour south of the party.
Oh,
We
wow.
arrived around mid-afternoon, and it was winter in the holiday town, so the area was completely empty. No other cars on the street. When we left for the party, I spent a moment deciding whether to pull the gate all the way closed. I'd had some trouble opening it earlier when we arrived. If we were getting home late at night, I didn't want to be stuck outside.
Alright, Josh got this. Josh has it. Josh has it. No, Nomi has
The
it.
party was great. We got back to the house around 12:30, and the gate was
No! Of course he looked straight into the wall.
Not only did I know that I unlocked it, but I knew it could just blow open in the wind. But I didn't want to make a big deal, so I was vague when my friend asked me if I'd shut it.
Phenomenal job, guys.
We went inside and decided to
Do
make
it
a
again.
scene. I was wandering through the house
Do
when
it again.
suddenly my friend raced from the kitchen into the hallway and virtually tackled me to the ground. She was convinced she heard someone walking around outside. We tried to calm ourselves down, but we had no cell reception and there was no one else around. Over the next half hour or so, as we sat in the hallway paralyzed with fear, we heard footsteps outside, and the back door being jammed.
My guy.
We decided we had to leave, so we gathered everything up and got ready to make a break for the car. Just as we were at the front door ready to leave, there was a huge bang in the backyard, and suddenly what sounded like hundreds of birds started screaming.
Yo, what's up,
We
Eric?
led
How
to
you
the
doing?
car.
How you doing?
I ended up starting with all the
Of
stuff
course.
still on our laps.
Shit.
We hadn't bothered to even put in the back seat. As we
He didn't see
reversed
Josh,
off the
though.
driveway,
We
we saw somebody
Gucci, we
running up the
chillin'.
side of the house
As long as he
towards us. We sped the entire way home and didn't sleep at
Rockies
all
are here.
that night. When I was 10 and my youngest brother Ben was only 1, there was this one weekend that my parents were painting our bedrooms, so we would have to sleep in the basement. There was a pull-out couch down there that turned into a bed, and Ben had an extra crib down there. I was only 10, so sleeping in a pitch-dark basement was very uncomfortable. Somehow, having Ben down there made me feel a bit safer, though. He would wake me up in the middle of the night crying, and for some reason, tending to him made sleeping down there a little less scary. But there was this one time that I woke up to him screaming. Not crying, screaming, like no 1-year-old should. I was scared shitless immediately and ran over to him to see what was wrong. He was standing up looking at me, pointing to something. I looked in the direction he was pointing at. He was pointing into the pitch-dark boiler room right next to his foot. I felt like 1,000 knives just
hell just
in my chest. And even through the heat of the moment, I vaguely remember the faint sound of something falling over in the boiler room. And I felt as if I was being washed in that basement. I grabbed Ben and got the hell out of there as quickly as possible. I've never gone back down in that basement.
That's fine, man. That's good. Oh my god, it's heading forward. So what, Rena is the big
Number 3. I'm a 22-year-old girl. I was looking on Craigslist to buy a couch for my new apartment a month ago. I found something I thought seemed like a good deal. From the pictures, the couch seemed to be in great shape. The seller wanted to be contacted by email. His email was MexicanPapi666 at hotmail.com.
I don't know if he's on.
I felt that email was a bit off-putting, but I still went ahead and emailed him my offer. He responded within 5 minutes accepting the offer and asking for my address. I honestly felt uncomfortable with his asking. I did not want a stranger coming to my house.
He just stuck me with that? What?
But he continually insisted that he come to my house. Eventually I stopped responding, and a day later, he emailed me again, giving me his address. I didn't know if I should go at that point. It seemed like a steal, almost too good to be true. And according to his address, he didn't live too far. So I got my van and drove over to the seller's house. I immediately
Open it,
noticed
somebody,
that the house
please.
was a bit smaller than all the other houses in the block.
Bruh.
When I rang the bell, a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap answered the door.
Nice.
He gave me a huge smile and invited me in. I was immediately feeling uneasy. He led me into his living room, and I saw the couch.
Wow.
Immediately,
I know
I
what
saw
this
scuff
sounds like.
marks and small tears in the couch. It was not at all in the shape that it appeared in the ad. I commented on this, and he just smiled and offered to lower the price.
So, oh no,
I
wait.
told him I'm not interested.
map.
But here's where things started getting creepy. As I was making my way out of the house, he put his hand on my shoulder and offered to give it to me for free if I was willing to, quote-unquote, give something to him. I let out a disgusted gasp and got back into my car. I didn't even look up out the window. I just drove away from there quickly. But it doesn't end there. That same night, I was laying in my bed watching TV, and I thought I heard somebody stomping up the steps of my porch. I muted the TV, and was able to clearly hear the sound of somebody fiddling with my front door now. I jumped out of my bed and tiptoed over to the front door to look through the peephole, but whoever it was already gone.
Oh
Then,
my god.
I thought I could hear the sound of the gate to the backyard opening and closing. That was when I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. Soon after, I heard the sound of somebody fiddling with the doorknob to the back door of the apartment. I yelled to whoever it was that the police were on their way, and after that, I heard the sound of the gate opening and closing again. They were gone. This was a month ago, and nothing has happened since, but I still can't sleep at night. I'm 99% sure it was the man that was selling the couch. He must have followed me home. There's no way it was just a coincidence. I don't plan on using Craigslist anymore. I'm still trying to find a new apartment. Number 2. I was looking for a car to buy for my son for his 18th birthday. I was searching all the typical car websites, cars.com, eBay Motors. They were all overpriced as expected. Craigslist was the only place to find an actual deal. About a week into my search, I found an 03 Toyota Camry. It had 67,000 miles, no accidents, no damage, in good condition for only $3,500. This seems like a steal for such a reliable car with such low mileage. The seller lived about 10 miles from me, which was a reasonable drive when looking for a car. I gave him a call to set up a time to
So
contact
goddamn annoying.
The man sounded normal on the phone. He assured me that there were absolutely no
Gonna drown in
in the car. He
the.
introduced himself as Bob. I brought along $3,500 in cash, even though I planned on moving
I'm
down
not
the
easy.
price
I didn't know
as
what
much as
happened. I
possible.
told him I was gonna be back, but
I
he
pulled
left
up
the
the
party.
dirt road to Bob's property about 15 minutes early.
And I didn't
It was
check
a
the
tiny
police
little
one.
house with a decent-sized
That's
property,
my bad.
only because it was a bit far from the nearest neighbors. The garage was
So
open,
annoying
so
how
I
you
could
get back
see
clash.
no one was inside. But except for an unusual amount of car parts, it was empty. The car was nowhere in sight. The only car on the property was
Yeah,
an
I
old
wanna
pickup
feel like
truck.
how clash ain't that
I went
nah.
over to the front door to check
I don't
the
know
house
what
number.
this
Clash,
is.
feel like stupid ass fucking alibi.
The doorbell button was missing, so I knocked on the front door. I knocked for exactly 5 minutes before deciding to give
Yeah,
him a
this
call.
little shit
So I
lord.
dialed
Just
his
tell me
number
about
and heard the
that's
sound of his
ridiculous.
cell phone ringing from inside the house. I was extremely confused at this point. Now I knew I had the right house. I didn't understand why he was calling, why he wasn't answering. I decided I had to take a peek through one of the windows to see if anybody was inside. Peering through the glass,
Listen, you got killed by the clash like I did.
dark inside the house. I saw a very old fashioned dining room set.
I can't climb, bro.
I saw somebody standing at the back door of the house, staring outside. I figured that must have been God, so I knocked on the window. But he
There's
didn't
actually
move.
no way this happened.
There was no gate or anything to the backyard. It was just a wide open yard, since this wasn't a rural area. I simply walked around the house to the backyard. I didn't understand why I couldn't hear me. When I got to the back door, I made a shocking realization.
Nice.
The figure standing by the door was a taxidermy human being. I ran straight back the way I came and back to my car. I looked up one last time before driving off. The blinds to the window I had peeked into had been shut, and I could see two of the blinds bent open. Somebody was at that window watching me. You can probably guess I had the gas pedal to the floor the whole way home. The whole situation still makes no sense. All the car parts, the fact that there was no Toyota Camry,
Supposed to be a red free color on Monday. For real?
the fact that there was no car there leads me to believe that whoever that man was wasn't
Free color
planning
for
on
what
selling
skin?
me anything.
No.
And that also leads to the disturbing thought that I was very close to becoming a lifeless statue staring out that man's back
Do
door.
I have that skin?